I've been trying to write this down for days now, but the ink keeps shifting on the page, the words rearranging themselves when I look away. Even now, my hands shake as I type this, watching the letters dance across the screen. I need to get this warning out while I still can, while I still remember who I was before the roadside America Motel, before the map, before the endless path. Let me start from the beginning, though I'm not sure where that is anymore. Time moves differently here, loops back on itself like a snake eating its own tail. But I remember running. I remember that clearly. I'd been on the road for 3 days, putting as much distance as possible between myself and Chicago, between myself and Nathan. 3 years of marriage had taught me the signs, the way his jaw would clench, how his fingers would drum against the table in that specific rhythm that meant violence was coming. I'd seen too many women come through the ER where I worked as a nurse, all wearing those same hollow eyes, all carrying those same careful lies about falling downstairs or walking into doors. I waited until Nathan was at work, packed a single bag, emptied our joint account. My money anyway. He'd never held a job longer than a month, and ran. No destination in mind, just away. Route 66 stretched out before me like a promise of freedom, each mile marker putting more distance between me and the life I was leaving behind. The first 2 nights, I stayed at chain hotels, the kind with bright lights and security cameras and lots of witnesses. But by the 3rd night, exhaustion was setting in. My eyes burned from too many hours of highway hypnosis, and the caffeine jitters had turned into a full-body tremor. When I saw the neon sign for the roadside America Motel cutting through the darkness, it felt like an answer to an unspoken prayer. The place looked like something out of an old postcard, one of those classic Route 66 motels that time forgot. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting alternating shadows of red and blue across the empty parking lot. A line of identical doors faced the highway, their white paint peeling to reveal older layers beneath, like scars that never quite healed. The office smelled of dust and old coffee, with a hint of something else. Something sweet and chemical that reminded me of the hospital's morgue. The woman behind the desk looked as tired as I felt, her eyes hollow and dark in a way that seemed wrong somehow, like looking into empty windows in an abandoned house. "Need a room?" she asked, her voice carrying an echo it shouldn't have in such a small space. "And maybe a job," I said, surprising myself. I hadn't planned to stop running, but something about this place. "I noticed your help wanted sign. I have experience in customer service and I'm good with night shifts from my nursing days." She smiled then, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. Perfect timing. The night shift position just opened up. $50 an hour, no questions asked. I should have asked questions, should have wondered why a roadside motel was paying emergency room wages for a night clerk. But exhaustion and desperation have a way of drowning out common sense. "When can I start?" "Tonight, if you're willing. I'll even throw in a free room." She pushed a ledger across the desk. "Just sign here." I signed without reading the fine print. Another mistake to add to my growing collection. The room key she gave me had no number, just a small symbol etched into the brass that seemed to change every time I looked directly at it. The room itself was normal. Aggressively normal. The kind of normal that feels like a thin veneer over something else, like stage makeup covering a bruise. I collapsed onto the bed, too tired to even change clothes. That first night passed dreamlessly, or maybe I just can't remember the dreams anymore. They blur together now, All those nights in all those rooms that might have been the same room. My first shift started normally enough. Check in the occasional guest, keep the coffee pot full, clean the front desk. It wasn't until I was organizing the old ledgers that I found it, a crumpled map tucked between the pages like a forgotten bookmark. The map showed Route 66, but not like any version I'd seen before. Motels were marked along its length, some crossed out with violent red X's, others circled in what looked uncomfortably like dried blood. And at the bottom, in handwriting that shook with barely controlled panic, were the rules. The rules were written in different colors of ink, as if they'd been added over time by different hands, though the handwriting remained the same, just progressively more desperate. Rule 1. Draw an X over the room you sleep in on the map. If you forget, your room won't be the same in the morning. Rule 2. Leave an item behind in every room you stay in. If you take everything with you, you'll never find the way out. Rule 3. If you hear whistling after midnight, do not follow it. Rule 4. Always make the bed before you leave. If you don't, you'll find someone already sleeping there when you return. Rule 5. Do not enter the lobby after 3 a.m. The person at the desk isn't the one who hired you. Rule 6. Write your name in the guest ledger every night. If your name disappears from the ledger, you already checked out, but not the way you think. Rule 7. Never stay in the same room twice. Rule 8. Follow the route the map shows exactly. No detours. If you take a wrong turn, you'll end up where they want you to be. I almost laughed. Fucking pricks. Must be messing with me? Maybe a prop from one of those murder mystery weekend events. But something about the way the ink had bled into the paper, the way some letters seemed to squirm when viewed directly, made my skin crawl. That first night passed quietly enough. I checked in a few travelers. A tired-looking salesman who wouldn't meet my eyes. A young couple who seemed too stiff in their movements, like actors who hadn't quite learned their roles. I filed the map away and tried to forget about it. My mistake was falling asleep without marking my room on the map. I woke to wrongness. The air felt thick, like breathing through syrup, and the light coming through the windows had a greenish tint that made my head hurt. The furniture had shifted. Subtle changes at first. The TV was on the opposite wall. The bathroom door had moved 3 feet to the left. The paintings showed different scenes, though they kept changing when I wasn't looking directly at them. But the worst part was the suitcase. It sat on the bed. My bed. But it wasn't mine. The leather was cracked and ancient, the brass fittings green with age. A luggage tag hung from the handle, bearing my name in handwriting I didn't recognize. When I touched it, the leather felt warm, like skin that had just been vacated. I ran to the lobby, heart pounding. The morning clerk, a different woman from the one who'd hired me, but somehow similar in a way I couldn't quite define, looked up with knowing eyes. "Lost something?" she asked, her smile too wide for her face. I started to respond, but movement from the map on the wall caught my eye. It was different from the one I'd found, newer, cleaner. But as I watched, a red X appeared over room 113, drawn by an invisible hand. "You should mark your room next time," the clerk said. "Rules are important here." I nodded numbly and returned to my room. Except it wasn't my room anymore. The number on the door had changed, and when I tried my key, it wouldn't fit. None of the keys would ever fit quite right again. That night, my second shift, I heard the whistling. It started faintly, drifting in from the parking lot like a half-remembered lullaby. The sound made my teeth ache and my vision blur, but something about it called to me. I found myself walking to the office door before I remember the rule. If you hear whistling after midnight, do not follow it. Through the window, I saw a figure standing by the old Coke machine. It was person-shaped mostly, but its proportions were wrong. Arms too long, neck bent at an impossible angle. It was whistling that twisted melody, swaying slightly in the fluorescent glare of the vending machine's light. Another figure emerged from the darkness, walking with jerky, puppet-like movements toward the whistling. As it passed under the streetlight, I saw its face, or rather the absence of a face. Just smooth, blank skin where features should be. The whistling grew louder, more insistent, and the faceless figure's steps became more urgent. I closed the curtains and didn't look out again until sunrise. When I finally did, there were 2 sets of footprints in the morning dew, leading away from the motel and into the desert. They went on for about 50 feet before simply stopping, as if their owners had vanished into thin air. I tried to be more careful after that. I marked my room on the map each night, room 115, then 207, then 122. I never stayed in the same one twice. I left small things behind: a hairpin, a receipt, a single earring. Breadcrumbs marking a trail I hoped would lead back to normalcy. But normalcy was becoming a distant memory. The motel shifted around me like a living thing. Corridors extended impossibly when walked down them. Doors opened into rooms that couldn't exist in the available space. And the guests... God, the guests. Some were obviously wrong. Too tall, too fluid in their movements, speaking in voices that echoed too much or not at all. Others seemed normal until you noticed the small things. How they never blinked, or how their reflections in mirrors moved a fraction of a second too late. I learned to check the guest ledger obsessively, writing my name every night in clear, careful letters. But one night, about a week into my stay, I opened the book to find my signature gone. Not crossed out or erased, simply gone, as if it had never been there at all. Panic hit me like a physical force when I saw my missing signature. What was it the rules had said? If your name disappears from the ledger, you already checked out. But not the way you think. I ran to my room, room 128 that night, and started packing. As I threw clothes into my bag, I noticed something wrong with my reflection in the mirror. It wasn't just moving a fraction too late anymore. It was doing completely different things. While I frantically packed, my reflection stood perfectly still, watching me with a sad smile. "It won't work," it said, its voice like my own, but distorted, as if speaking through water. "You can't leave until you understand what this place is." I ran, left everything except my purse and car keys. Another mistake. The parking lot was different at night. The asphalt seemed to ripple under the neon lights, and the painted lines shifted like living things. My car was where I'd left it, but something was wrong. The interior lights showed shadows of people sitting in the seats, but when I opened the door, it was empty. I drove anyway. The highway stretched out before me, endless and empty. The map I'd found was on the passenger seat. I didn't remember bringing it, but there it was. As I drove, the marked locations began to shift and change. New motels appeared. Others vanished, the red X's moving like blood under the paper's surface. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt wrong, stretched and twisted like taffy. I kept driving until sunrise, until my gas tank was nearly empty. And when I finally pulled into a gas station, my heart stopped It was the Roadside America Motel. Same neon sign, same peeling paint, same empty parking lot. But I'd driven hundreds of miles. It was impossible. The morning clerk, the same woman, or maybe her sister, or maybe another version of her, smiled that too wide smile. "Welcome back," she said. "You forgot to make your bed." I ran back to room 128, though I knew what I'd find. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted and stained with something dark. And there, lying on top of the covers, was a figure. Myself, or a version of myself, eyes wide and staring at nothing, skin gray and translucent like old paper. It turned its head to look at me, neck creaking like rusty hinges. "You should have made the bed," it said in my voice. I slammed the door and ran, but every room I passed showed the same scene through their windows. Versions of myself in various states of decay, all unmade beds, all wrong endings to my story. That's when I understood what the map really was. It wasn't showing locations. It was showing paths between realities. Each room was a different version of the same place. Each guest a traveler caught between worlds. The motel wasn't just a building. It was a crossroads, a way station between what was and what could be. I tried burning the map that night, watched it catch fire, curl into ash. But when I woke up, it was there again, tattooed on my forearm in lines of dark ink that seemed to move under my skin. The routes kept changing, new paths appearing and disappearing like veins pulsing with black blood. The next few days blurred together. I kept trying to leave, but every road led back to the motel. Sometimes it looked different. A Holiday Inn in Nebraska, a bed and breakfast in Ohio, a hostel in New Mexico. But it was always the same place. The same empty parking lot, the same buzzing neon, the same clerk with her too wide smile. I broke all the rules in desperation. Stayed in room 207 twice, took everything with me when I left, ignored the whistling when it called. But each violation only made things worse. The second time in 207, I found another version of myself already there, one that had made different choices, taken different paths. We talked until sunrise, sharing memories that diverged and reconnected like streams flowing into the same dark river. The whistling grew louder each night, and the things it led away became more familiar. I saw my mother walking stiffly toward the sound, her face smooth and blank. My father, dead 3 years now, shuffling across the parking lot. Nathan, moving like a marionette with cut strings. All of them drawn by that twisted melody into the desert darkness. Last night, I found one final note in the guest ledger. It was written in my handwriting. Not this version of my handwriting, but how it will look years from now, shaky and worn thin by time. Accept your role, or the path will never end. The words shifted as I read them, bleeding into new messages. Every clerk was you. Every path leads here. The map is the way. The way is you. I thought about every clerk I'd seen during my stay, their familiar mannerisms, the way they all smiled the same smile, how their eyes held the same hollow look. They weren't different people. They were all me, caught in different loops of the same endless shift. I tried one last desperate escape, packed nothing, left the bed unmade, ignored the whistling that had started to sound like my own voice. I drove for what felt like days, the map tattoo on my arm, burning and shifting with each mile. The highways blurred together, signs pointing to cities that shouldn't exist, exits leading to places that had never been. Every gas station was the Roadside America Motel. Every diner was the Roadside America Motel. Every rest stop was the Roadside America Motel. The path wasn't just a road anymore. It was carved into reality itself, and I had become part of its geography. The map on my arm showed me the truth. I wasn't traveling between places. I was traveling between versions of myself. Every choice I'd ever made had created a new path, a new room, a new clerk at a new desk. The version of me that stayed with Nathan became room 113, endlessly reliving that last brutal argument. The version that became a doctor instead of a nurse waited in room 207, still trying to save patients who were already gone. The version that turned left instead of right 10 years ago paced in room 128, wondering about the life she could have had. They were all me, and they were all trapped. When I finally pulled into the parking lot one last time, I wasn't surprised to see myself behind the desk, older, grayer, with eyes that had seen too many travelers take too many paths. She smiled that familiar smile, the one I'd seen on so many faces that were my own. "It's your shift now," she said, standing up from the desk. I understood then. The only way out was through. Through every possibility, every choice, every version of myself that had ever checked in or out of this place. I sat down at the desk, feeling the weight of all those other lives settling around me like a familiar coat. The map tattoo on my arm shifted one final time, showing new paths, new possibilities. Somewhere out there, another version of me was just pulling into the parking lot, seeing the neon sign for the first time, about to start her own journey through the endless corridors of what might have been. The next morning, a young woman walked in, running from something or someone, looking for a room and maybe a job. She had my face, not as it is now, but as it was when I first arrived, when I still thought I could escape. I smiled my too wide smile and pushed the ledger across the desk. "Just sign here," I said, my voice carrying that familiar echo. The night shift position just opened up. She signed without reading. They always do. Now I understand what this place really is, though the knowledge sits in my mind like broken glass. The Roadside America Motel isn't just a waypoint between destinations. It's a waypoint between selves, a cancer growing in the flesh of reality. Every room is a different life. Every key opens a different possibility, and every clerk is another version of me, guiding travelers through the maze of their own choices. I watch the security cameras now, seeing the same scenes play out across infinite variations. In room 113, a version of me lies awake, listening to Nathan's footsteps getting closer, forever reliving the night I originally chose to run. In 207, I'm still a medical student, trying to save my first patient, watching him die again and again in slightly different ways. Room 328 shows the life where I turned left instead of right on that rainy night in October, where I never met Nathan at all. The hallways between these rooms twist through dimensions that shouldn't exist, connecting moments that never quite happened to choices that were never quite made. Sometimes I catch glimpses through the windows of other clerks, other me's, going about their duties. We never speak to each other directly. The rules forbid it. But sometimes we leave notes, warnings written in our shared handwriting that changes slightly with each iteration. The man in the blue suit comes tonight. Don't let him pay with coins. Room 415 doesn't exist yet, but it will after the next choice. The whistling is getting closer. It knows all our names now. I'm writing this as a warning, though I know it won't help. The words themselves seem to resist being written, squirming under my pen like living things trying to escape. If you're reading this, you're already part of the path. Maybe you're in one of our rooms right now, staring at a map that seems to move when you're not looking directly at it. Maybe you're just pulling into our parking lot, drawn by our neon sign and the promise of a good hourly rate. Or maybe you're me. Another version, another choice, another branch in the endless path. I've started seeing the patterns in the guest ledger. Every signature is a variation of the same names, written in slightly different hands. John Smith becomes Johann Schmidt, becomes Jean Forgeron, becomes... well, you get the idea. The same souls checking in again and again, each time hoping for a different outcome, each time becoming another room in this infinite hotel. Either way, remember the rules. They're written in something darker than ink, bound by forces that existed before time and will exist after the last star burns out. Mark your room on the map, or reality will mark it for you. Leave something behind, because you can't carry all yourselves with you. Ignore the whistling. It's the sound of choices being unmade. Make your bed, or find out who else has been sleeping in your life. Stay out of the lobby after 3 a.m., when the barriers between selves are thinnest. Sign the ledger so we know which version of you is still alive. Never return to a room. The you that's already there doesn't want to share. Follow the path because the alternatives are worse than you can imagine. But most importantly, remember this. Every choice you make creates a new room in this endless motel. Every decision splits the path, adds another X to the map, puts another version of yourself behind another desk in another reality. I've watched it happen, seen the walls stretch and groan as new rooms birth themselves into existence, heard the screams of possibility as another choice creates another branch, another life, another hell. The map tattoo on my arm burns as I write this, new routes appearing like veins under my skin. Each one leads to another version of the truth, another variation of this warning. In some versions, I escape. In others, I've always been here. In the worst ones, I realize this isn't even a motel at all, but something else. Wearing the skin of a building, feeding on the endless possibilities of human choice. And somewhere, in some version of this story, there's a way out. I have to believe that, even as I feel myself fragmenting across realities, becoming more clerk than person. Even as I sit here at the desk, watching the sun set and the neon flicker to life, watching another tired traveler pull into our parking lot, I have to believe there's an ending that isn't just another beginning. The security monitor shows them getting out of their car. Another me, of course, though they don't know it yet. This version looks younger, more hopeful. They haven't seen the map yet, haven't realized that their entire life has been a path leading to this desk, this moment, this choice. Until then, I'll be here. All of me will be here, in every room, behind every desk, in every reality where someone needs a place to stay and doesn't read the fine print. We are the clerks and the guests, the hunters and the hunted, the path and the travelers upon it. Welcome to the Roadside America Motel. Your room is ready, and I've always been here, waiting for you to check in, waiting for me to check in, waiting for us to become what we've always been, just another X on an infinite map, just another room in an endless hotel, just another clerk guiding ourselves toward a destiny we chose before we knew we were choosing. The neon sign flickers, and somewhere, a door opens to a room that hasn't existed until now. I hear whistling in the distance, and I know without looking that the map on my arm is changing again, adding new routes, new possibilities, new versions of the same endless night. Check in, check out, move on, return. The path is the destination. The clerk is the guest. The motel is the map. And we are all just different rooms in the same infinite story.